joining us for this month's episode of This Is My Story. In this podcast, we will sit down and talk to someone who has a powerful story of transformation because of what Jesus did in their life.
I'm Brendan.
I'm Jessica.
And this is our story.
Well, hey guys, thank you so much for joining us on This Is My Story podcast. It's awesome because this time this is our story, and we're so glad to have Brendan and Jessica with us here today. And so thanks for coming, guys. We appreciate
thanks for having us.
Yeah.
It's a blast. We've been enjoying seeing all these.
Oh man, we're honored to have you guys. And as Maddie and I were talking, each time we just pray like, Lord, who do you want us to interview? Who do you want us to have? And obviously, man, we've just seen the spiritual growth in your guys' life throughout the years. And, you guys have been good friends to us for so long. And so, man, just seeing what God has done in your life, not just for a year or two, but, man, many, many years. Right. It's been amazing to watch what God has done. And got to do your wedding, and so it's so amazing. And so, but, man, we go way back, and so excited just, for you guys to be able to, share your story. And because people kind of, they see on the outside, a lot of times the Instagram version, like, oh man, look at what they're doing now. Y'all got this beautiful family and this amazing job, but man, there's so much more that goes into it that they don't know about. So man, I'm so excited, for you guys to be able to share your story today.
Yeah, and this is a good excuse to hang out. We haven't done anything together in forever. So.
I know, life gets crazy.
It does. Super crazy. Yeah, that's true.
For real. I don't know why they didn't name it COVID-20, by the way. ADD moment, but come on, 20. I know, but why not?
Okay.
They missed an opportunity.
We won't get into that.
But man, we go way back, and I know Maddie has heard me tell stories a million times of me and Brendan, right?
All the time.
Jessica as well.
Yeah. I'm sure they feel left out a little bit. But man, dude, I was in high school, when you really started to come around, what grade was it, when we started to really connect?
I'd say my freshman year, somewhere in there.
And
you were a junior, yeah.
Crazy, This is BC, right? We kind of ran into each other, before Jesus, and then now we're celebrating, life together with Jesus now. But man, it wasn't always that way.
Correct.
And so we kind of went our different, paths. And I was a little bit older than you, but man, we were still kind of involved in some, the same things, for a while.
Well, I would say that's probably actually what started it in the beginning. Yeah.
But man, kind of tell, starting with Brendan, like, what was it like growing up for you, man? Like, what was your home life? Give people some context for them to really see the kind of the inside of Brendan's life.
Sure. Yeah. So I'll be honest, growing up, I had it pretty good. There's not a lot of complaining I could do. My parents, I don't know if you guys know Joe or Susan Maxwell, but, they're the greatest. And they've always been there for me. They've always tried to push me in the right direction. There's not anything I ever went without. So, that's just kind of a little backstory to how it was for me growing up.
Yeah. And so then, like, within that, was God kind of a sin of your life? Or not the sin of your life, but did you go to church? What was that like? What was the context at home as far as, relationship with God going?
Yeah. So, as I was growing up, real young, we were in church pretty often, just about every Sunday. And then, as I got a little older, sports and stuff started to kind of get into the mix. I played on a travel baseball team, so we were out of town, quite a bit with that, playing in tournaments. So, I think about junior highs when church kind of started to get put on the back burner just a little bit.
Right. Mm-hmm. So what was that like for you? And I'm glad that you say, listen, I had a good life. I had good parents. I have, this typical upbringing. You were in Briarwood, right? Which is a good, neighborhood here in town. That's kind of the prestigious, neighborhood. But I think that's so powerful because oftentimes when we hear people's stories, stories like mine or stories like, Angie or Austin, who we've had on this podcast, it's a rough upbringing. Right. Yeah. And that's what I love so much about hearing your stories. Man, you don't, just because you're raised in a Christian home or go to church doesn't mean that that's automatically setting you up for success,
right?
In life and with Jesus. And so, I think it's important for you to say, hey, I grew up in the church, but man, God kind of got put on the back burner. For you, what was that like for you? Hearing the Bible stories, going to church and all that, and then all of a sudden sports kind of really took, it kind of sounds like that was the obstacle that kind of, okay, man, this is now kind of our God. Now, we wouldn't say it like that, but we treat it like that. What was that like for you? Because did you like going to church? Did you not like going to church? And then when church wasn't really there anymore, what was it like for you?
Yeah. So honestly, about junior high, that's when you start worrying about what's cool and who's cool and what are you doing, what are people thinking about you, and obviously you get a lot more attention from playing sports than you do going to church.
Right.
So, yeah, I would say that it easily just kind of became unimportant to me. And,
Right.
I wasn't really, just not even really wanting to go anymore.
Yeah. Like, did you ever have like a Jesus moment, like a Jesus encounter that we would call it? Or was it just kind of going through the motions, to be honest?
Oh, just going through the motions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you kind of hate church going,
Yeah,
as
I
a
mean,
kid?
definitely, not when I was really young, but as I got older, yeah, it was a pain in the butt, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. The relationship wasn't there, but just more
Right.
Right,
religion,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
And
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
relationship? It was religion, And so then so that was junior high. So when did when was that turning point for you? Because, for those that don't know, you began to get in trouble, right?
Right,
And so what
yeah.
was that like for you?
Yeah, so that turning point was definitely, right around, I guess it would have been the end of freshman year. I was at, my quote unquote rock bottom, just that searching point in your life where you're like, what is life even about?
Right.
I'm not even in church anymore, really.
Right.
Sports are always there. That's kind of my identity now, but I'm not fulfilled.
Yeah.
Right.
What's that
Like
look
something it's still not clicking for me.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So was it in junior high when you really started using drugs and things of that nature? And how did
Yeah.
you get exposed to it?
Yeah, so in 8th grade, I had a friend whose dad passed away from cancer, and I noticed an immediate change in him whenever that was going on. So I got curious about, what's going on with my friend.
Right.
And I ended up finding out, that he had started using painkillers. So I ended up, asking about those, and ended up going back to my house and got in my medicine cabinet, and I mean, it was just all right in front of me at that point.
7th grade, 8th grade, somewhere
It was
around
8th
there?
grade.
8th
yeah,
grade.
right in the middle, 8th grade, towards
Yeah.
the end. So I started experimenting with Oxycontin and
Right.
morphine, hydros, stuff like that. And then, as soon as that happened, that's kind of when I started pouring myself into, because I found what I thought was fulfillment.
Right.
Life had started to get boring for me, really,
Yeah.
if I'm being honest. We don't go to church anymore. It's not really important in the house anymore.
Right.
Sports are always going to be there.
Right.
I was luckily naturally pretty good at sports. So
So you were still an athlete while you were
Yeah.
experimenting with drugs.
right. Yeah, definitely just dipping into it. And, that was in 8th grade. And then that turning point was about 2 years later, a year and a half later. And so much happened in that 2 years. It
Yeah.
was just like, man, there's got to be more to this life
Right.
Right.
than what I'm doing right now.
Right. So, I moved back to Marshfield, and, because I was in Springfield, and then that's when you and I, got associated. And
Right,
this was
right.
before Jesus,
Yeah.
Maddie, I've never told you this before, but I didn't always follow God,
Oh.
jokes. And so I was using drugs, I was throwing the
Yeah.
parties, I was at the parties and all that. And that's kind of where I got, affiliated with you, there's this little Brendan, right? I don't know why we've always said little Brendan, but, you were there, and I was this older guy, and I don't know if you even recall the first moment that we met or anything like that. I don't really. I remember being in a truck one night. And you
I
were
think
there.
I do recall it.
Yeah, and but that's when we started, to kind of come across one another.
Right, right.
And you were younger and I was older, but that that was kind of my first moment, and then. God radically transformed my life, and I think you'd have been a freshman around that point in time. And, kind of tell us, because I've shared different stories with Maddie, I'm sure Jessica's heard different things, but kind of give your, perception and side of the story of, how you and I got reconnected, and then the whole Jesus, movement within our relationship. What was that like for you?
Oh, man. Yeah. I mean, so whenever you got saved, I didn't even hear about you or see you much after that for a couple months, really, because obviously you weren't in the same scene anymore or around the same people too much. And I think I had honestly just kind of forgot about it, that you had made that change, and a lot of the people that made the change with you, they weren't doing it anymore.
Right.
And I think I'd probably just assumed the same for you,
Right.
honestly.
Yeah.
but yeah, I remember whenever I found out differently,
Right.
that night at John and Selena's.
And so, like, for context, you were there just with some other friends, right?
Yeah. Hi.
Did you know that John and Selena were youth pastors or anything like that?
So on the way there, my friend, one of our friends is like, "Hey, so when we get over here, don't cuss or anything, dude." And I was like, "Well, where are we going?" And he's like, "John and Selena's." I was like, "Why can't we cuss?" He's like,
Right.
They're youth pastors. And I was like, "Wow, why are we going over
Right.
here?"
Why were you guys going there? Just
I think that he wanted to talk to John about
Yeah.
something that he was dealing with.
That's funny.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I had no idea what was about to happen, dude. Oh man.
And so you get there, and then I don't even know if I knew you were coming. I knew the others were.
Oh.
And then I just remember being like, "What's up, man?"
Yeah.
I hadn't seen you forever.
Yeah, I came downstairs and you were playing Madden.
Of course.
Yeah, yeah. And they went outside to talk, so I just sat down on the couch and yeah, like you said, you're like, "Man, what's going on? We haven't seen each other in forever or even talked." And yeah, that's whenever, because I think like a week before that, we were talking on Facebook. I'd seen you post something about like church camp,
Right.
something like that. And I commented because at that point in time, man, like I said, I was so just searching for something different, and I saw you posting about Jesus and God, and I commented on there.
At this point in time, are you extremely addicted to painkillers?
I mean, yeah, like I'd already had quite a few big spells of withdrawals,
Right.
from the opiates, and because like, man, my parents. They had no idea that stuff could do that to you.
Right.
So there was a lot in that medicine cabinet, man. And when it
Just
ran
the
out,
pill.
yeah. And when it ran out, I mean, I was hurting. And I remember seeing that on Facebook, and I was like, "Oh, so he's still doing this thing."
Right.
Right. And
Yeah.
so then we ran into each other unexpectedly. And I mean, it just immediately, DJ, he's like, "Well, where are you at with things, man? Like,
Yeah.
how are you feeling about life right now?" And
Right.
do you have a relationship with the Lord? And you always think you do,
Right.
until that moment, whenever it just hits you right in the face.
Break that down, because I think that's an important conversation, because it's so normal now. Like, yeah, Brendan and Dylan, great, best friend, great friends, but man, like, I just remember little Brendan, and then you're sitting there, and I would love to hear your story, your side, because that was funny. But I just remember being like, "Dude, you right with the Lord or not?" And you alluded to that. But what was going on in your mind at that point in time? Did you recognize, like, man, God's moving, or what was that like for you?
Honestly, it was like it was a little scary,
Right.
Because I had never felt that way before. I'd never felt that much like not like pressure, but
Right.
just something heavy,
Yeah.
And then we started watching your testimony that had just been recorded like not too long ago.
Right. So I was like new in my faith, and I didn't know what to do other than be like, "Hey, man, I just shared my story. Let's watch it."
It was perfect, dude. I mean, it was
Right.
exactly what was needed.
Man, and I remember you were watching it, and the Spirit just fell on you.
Dude.
You got emotional, and what was that like? Because some people be like the skeptics. Because listen, we're affiliated with a lot of different people. Some believers, some not.
Yeah.
And people are going to hear this, but okay, what was that turning point for Brendan, or what was that first Jesus encounter? Because you'd been to church, you'd done church, but this wasn't church. Man, the church in the building, it's the people, and there we are in John and Selena's
It was
basement.
just a basement.
The
Yeah,
Spirit just fell on you, know?
Right.
And you'd say, "Well, it's Dylan's story." Well, you've heard a lot of stories. What
Yeah.
would you tell people of, like, what was that moment like of God just coming on you?
Well, I mean, it was the fact that, although we didn't go through the same things growing up, we had this similar feeling of what is this life about, and
Yeah.
where am I going? Like what am I supposed to be doing here with my time? And
It's good.
you started talking about that and how you were feeling in your testimony, and dude, I could just relate. Like
Right.
that's where I was at when we were in the basement. It
Right.
was, what the heck am I doing?
Right.
Yeah.
And then, I was a little bit older than you, and so you saw the transformation, and that's what's amazing about being Christians. Like, just let your light shine,
Yeah.
And I remember you just had your head down, and I'm like, I don't know how to lead people to Jesus yet. I've just got saved, and so I'm like, "Hey, John,"
remember that, yeah.
and so like, we pray over you, and I'm sure your other friends, because I don't know if they weren't really serving the Lord, so what, you didn't plan on coming and giving your hearts to the Lord, or having
No.
that first encounter. So what was
Not at
that?
all.
What was that ride like after you left? there that day.
Well, like the people I came with, some of them had gotten saved with you, you know?
Yeah.
And so like when we left, you know, they were happy for me because
Right.
they knew what
Right.
happened, and they were
Wow.
like, you know, it was Brendan this time, like, you know, and like, but yeah, as far as my friends, you know, that had no clue yet.
Yeah.
That was a whole nother deal.
Right. And so, you know, you leave there and then we stay, we stay in contact, you know, and you start coming over to John and Selena's more and more, right? And then I just remember one story. I can't share, the entirety of it because people would judge me hardcore at my word choice. I wouldn't say very long, but I remember, Brendan started to come around and I really just kind of felt like I took him under my wing. You know, I loved him. I'm like, man, I care about this guy. And, and I just remember you being in a situation that you thought it was going to be a positive environment. It wasn't. And I went being like the dad going over and rescue. And I was ready to knock people out in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And, and that's, I think it's good for people to hear. That's when the relationship started of like, all right, man,
Dude,
hey, I'm
it
here
really
for you.
was. Yeah. Until you just said that, I kind of had not seen it that way, but that's whenever I knew like I can rely on him.
Right.
You know.
And so that's where it all started. Like if you're around Marshville, Missouri, especially like with me and John and Selena, and then there's that history of Brendan and DJ and John, and so and that's, dude, I'm so excited to for people to be able to hear this. Man, you have a real encounter with the Lord. And you surrendered. But man, it wasn't a straight path for you, was it?
Not at all.
And kind of break that down, like, because I've witnessed it. I was right there.
Yeah.
But I wasn't the one, in your shoes. What was that like? What was that journey? You're trying to live for the Lord, but people around you, aren't living for the Lord. You're going to school and you have this reputation in the past, but now you're this new Christian. But man, temptation was there, and that temptation of drugs and all that was there. What was that like, man?
Yeah, I mean, it went really well for about 6 months, somewhere around there. And it's not anything like with old friends or anything like that, because they're their own people, and I make my own choices. But I just started, taking steps closer to the wrong direction again, and.
Yeah.
And you guys know how Satan is, man. He's crafty.
Yeah.
And he wants us just as bad as the Lord wants us.
Right. Kind of the temptation that the enemy used, was it drugs? Or
100%.
Was that the big thing?
It was 100% the same stuff I was doing before.
Yeah.
And it happened many times,
Right.
like I would walk away from it, try and get away from it, and a couple months later, I'd be right back to the same thing. And
Right.
And you see that a lot with opiates and stuff like that. But I think there was a lot of people around me who struggled seeing it, just because not many of them knew what that ever looked like before.
Right. I think now, especially in 2020, we're looking at this, opioid pandemic, or just
I mean, for real,
addiction
Yeah.
going on around us, But I think at that point in time, obviously there have been, overdoses and things like that. But I don't think that people realize, at least around here, what big of a deal prescription pills were.
Yeah. At that time, I don't think so. Dude.
Right.
Not that people didn't think it was a drug or anything. I mean, I used them. I snorted them. I was at school snorting them. I was, that was a big deal. And by the grace of God, that wasn't a struggle for me anymore. But I think it's important, for people to realize, hey, you did love the Lord. Man, it was a real encounter, and you were living for him, but man, you had a drug addiction.
Yeah.
Right.
Would you say that?
Yes, I would. Yeah. 'Cause, I mean, it carried even into years down the road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you're a freshman in high school, but then, to be honest, and correct me if I'm wrong, like all throughout your high school years, and I know like we'll get to college, but man, you'd be on fire for the Lord,
Yep.
and then come back,
Right.
and then on
100%.
fire for the Lord, and then come back. And man, like, it's such a miracle to be on this side now. And I love, we're going to talk just all about the blessings of God. And,
Yeah.
But man, I've never loved somebody, but hated somebody more than this. And when I say hate, not like, oh, I can't stand him. It's like, you idiot.
Yeah.
Like,
There was definitely some days I was avoiding Dylan Robinson.
Oh, yes.
Walking through the hallways.
dude. And, he's doing good and then not. And I just remember, because I loved you. It wasn't like, oh, do you suck? You're a sinner. No. It was, no, I see the spiritual battle. It's not, oh, I don't care for you anymore. It's no, I care for you so much.
Right.
That, man, it breaks my heart.
Right.
And with John, and I remember one night, and I think you've heard this, like, Brendan wasn't doing any good again. And, me and John would come alongside, hey, we're going to rally back. And I remember, I was living at John Selena's, and I was up there talking to John. I go, dude, I'm done with Brendan. He goes, yeah, me too, dude. He sucks. I was like, yeah, he sucks, man. And then we go back down, and the Lord's like, no, you're not. Like, do you love him? And I'm going to keep fighting for him. And about 10 minutes later, I walk up and go, hey, man, God told me I'm not done with Brendan. Yeah, me too, man. We can't be done with Brendan, And then we just prayed and prayed for him and prayed for him. But, dude, one of the best compliments I've ever gotten that wasn't a compliment. I posted something about Jesus in the church on Facebook, and somebody commented on there like, you can't even call that a church or a youth group or something like that if you let people like Brendan Maxwell keep coming back, time and time again. And I'm like, that's it. That's the gospel message, And I wasn't, I'm 27 now. At the time, I'm, a teenager. But man, I got this reality of God's grace of like, listen, he might be struggling, but man, we're called to love no matter what. You know what I'm saying? And the fact that people have an issue with that, of letting people back in the church, man, now I'm more proud of that than ever. But at the time, it was just people like, and listen, nobody was as frustrated as me. And it wasn't just like, oh, I hate Brendan. It's like, no, I saw the spiritual warfare. Yeah. You feel me? Yeah. Whereas like, man, I see, we're fighting against, man, Satan right now. The battle's not against flesh and blood. It's not Brendan versus, no, it's Satan's around. And he knew that one day he'd be married and have a beautiful wife and beautiful kids and beautiful all that. And he was fighting for that, And so I felt like I was fighting Satan right there. Right. But we knew, listen, all we could do is pray and have you come back in and eat fish and taters, and what was crazy is, this happened so many times, you going back and forth. But man, the thing about Brendan is when he came around, you couldn't help but love him. Just like, and that was a God-given grace. Where I'm like, this little turd, hey, let's go and hang out, know. Yeah. And you would come back in and we'd really, play Madden, right, and all that. Yeah. But and throughout your high school, life, it was kind of like that. But then, I moved to college and you went on to college, and you were, still kind of, going through this stuff, fighting the temptations. But then we found ourselves in college together. We were at Mid-American Nazarene University, and I think that was like for both of us, like, okay, this is the moment. This is the moment where the change is going to happen, and I'd like for you to kind of share that, like in your perspective. We're both there at MNU, and now one of our best friends, Tony was your roommate, and what was that like? You're in your mind going into that, like, okay, this is the moment, where it's going to change.
Yeah. So when we were headed off to college, dude, we were pumped because, I was younger, obviously. So when he went off to college, it sucked because it was your best friend, and you hang out all the time. And so John and I would just sit there and be like, man, I wonder what DJ's doing.
Right.
So yeah, when we were getting ready to,
man. Yeah. Totally did.
Yeah. So I was very excited to get up there and, play baseball and just hang out again and do things like we used to. And
did you see it as like a new start too?
Yeah, 100%. Because my senior year of high school, about halfway through, I got back on track again and went into that freshman year, super on track and just in tune. And so, yeah, man, I was really looking forward to it. Yeah. And it was awesome. Right. That whole first semester.
I was there.
Yeah.
And we did life together, right? Not you. I'm not going to, dog on your roommate, but, he couldn't keep his, room clean. So a lot of times I'd like to be in there, But, man, like, I was a intern youth pastor, and then at semester I took that full-time job.
Right. Yeah.
And I was like, okay. And it was sad, like, because I had so many friends there, and you, and I worried about Brendan. Yeah. I was like, man, like, that's my dude. And, he's on the baseball team. I know he's at a Christian college, but, man, it doesn't matter, where you're at. And, dude, I want you to kind of speak on that. You're at a Christian college. You're playing baseball. You've been good for a long time. What happened?
Well, I think anybody who has struggled with addiction can kind of relate to this part here. It's a slow fade, and there's a song about that. But it's a slow fade, and it's just one little step at a time. You start inching your way back to where you used to be. And that's exactly what happened. DJ left, and obviously I was bummed, and we still kept in touch. We still talked and texted and stuff like that. But yeah, just eventually, man, I just started slipping my way back into that routine of poor me, and I didn't even have anything to be like poor me about. That's just how Satan works.
Clever.
Yeah.
But by this point in time, when you went back into it, that's when you started using heavier drugs, right?
Right.
So how'd that getting just presented to you?
Yeah. So we were up at Mid-America, which is right outside Kansas City. So obviously there's a lot bigger selection to choose from, when it comes to drugs and stuff like that. So yeah, man, I just started smoking pot again at first,
right?
The
gateway,
right? Yeah, and then before I knew it, I was doing opiates again, and before I knew it, this time opiates weren't enough, and I was trying heroin, trying LSD and meth and all that stuff, just pretty much
at a Christian college.
Oh yeah, dude.
Playing baseball
at practice, dude. I mean, high on meth.
Wow.
Just playing outfield. You would never think that that's even possible there, and it's it's just part of my story though, dude.
It is.
So.
Well, and I appreciate you sharing that. I know it's raw, but it's part of your story because I like to say our story tells God's story, and not saying that God gave you that story. No, we have free will, but within that, man, listen. We're not telling you not to send your kids to a Christian college. We're not telling you not to raise your kid in church. But what I'm saying is it's real.
Yep.
Doesn't matter where you're at. Doesn't matter what your situation is around.
Yeah.
It's got to be
no matter
real.
What.
And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think, early on, it was, your faith was built on your parents and, okay, I'll go to the church. Then it was, John and Selena and DJ. Not that it was fully, but it was like really lenient upon that.
Oh yeah.
Then him and you were back together, and then just kind of went down that route, and then all of a sudden, this drug didn't do it. This drug didn't do it. This drug didn't do it.
Well, yeah, and especially when you know what's right, because I got saved in high school, dude. So at this point in time, I knew the truth. I knew what I was doing was just awful, and that it would have crazy consequences later or right now, and so then you're like 10 times more depressed. Whenever you know the truth.
You try to make yourself numb to it to avoid it completely.
I think that's why the heavier stuff came in, because it's like, man, dude, I know what I should be doing right now, and I'm not even close.
I remember, and I just tell this because it's hilarious to me now. You probably know what I'm going to say, but I was back at home. I was just visiting town, and Brendan came over, and he wasn't doing the best, but he, trying to do better. And we're sitting down. Do you know what I'm gonna say? We're sitting on the couch at John Selena's, and we're hanging out late at night, and we're playing Madden, of course. And he texts me. And
I've heard this story.
He doesn't know he texted me, and he's texting somebody about getting some pills. And use some little drug hood language, and then I read it, and then immediately I realized what he did. And he looked at me and goes,
"Dude, that was the worst."
And he goes, I go, "Who you talking to, dude?" "Bro, I'm sorry." And I'm like, "You idiot, dude." But what's funny about you is throughout high school and then college, man, the Lord never allowed you to get away with anything, dude.
Ever since I got saved, dude, it was not possible.
Oh, I love it.
And what's weird is I had never as far as the drugs go, man, no one even knew until I got saved. My parents had no idea, I told them that night. But then after that, every single time, dude.
you can, and I think that's, I think that's important for people to hear. Dude, why would God allow you? He never stops fighting for us,
He'll do whatever.
It seems like a roadblock or an obstacle, man. He's in that, And so, and this, obviously, people see the four of us here today, and your wife's here. But when did that connection with Jessica happen? So I just remember you're at college, and then Jessica got inserted in the picture, shortly after college, or how did that begin to happen? And I want to hear this. I want to hear you. Yeah.
So kind of funny. Our connection kind of started before college. I was summer of my freshman year and summer of his junior year.
Okay.
We had kind of hit each other up on social media.
Right.
And we had met up. The fair was in town that week, and we both knew what we were doing. Like we both were into smoking pot, so I think we both kind of knew that. And we had gotten together that night at the fair. But of course, I'm this like shy, timid girl, and Brendan will probably deny this, but he actually kind of ditched me that night. And he'll probably, like I said, he'll deny it.
He just smiled.
Because, I'm so shy. I had my friend with me, and we had met up, and, always through the phone, you can talk and talk and talk.
Right.
But when we got in person,
Yeah.
you're always doing those, like, awkward laughs as any, like, 16-year-old girl would do. That's, like, crushing on an older boy, And I remember he goes, hey, I'll be right back. And then I remember not seeing him anymore.
I have no idea what she's talking about.
Yeah.
No, but, I mean, that's just the state of mind we were in. And we talk about it, we joke about it now.
Piece of crap, bro.
No.
Right. And so that was in high school then.
Yeah, so that was kind of like our initial like meeting, and then I don't think we really talked too much after that because
I don't know why.
Right.
Well, I mean I was dating one of his friends, it kind of in between, and then I had gotten back
Kinda
with
get back at
I
him,
got and then I had gotten back with that friend shortly after that. So I think we kind of just like went our separate ways, of course.
Right, yeah.
Right.
And then I would say, so after my senior year, after I graduated that summer, he had came home. I think you were injured from baseball.
Yeah, yep.
He had came home for 2 weeks, and
Who even knows if I was actually
Right.
Yeah, so he had hit me up again. Again, we both knew we were up to no good.
Right.
And when he hit me up that night, as many people know, Brendan's brother and I have a past.
Yeah.
And so when Brendan hit me up that night, I was kind of hesitant. And I was like, I don't know, like, this doesn't feel right. But I was also, not doing good things. And I knew what he had. And I was like, well, maybe we'll just hang out and we can smoke together. And it won't be anything,
Right.
Little did I know, that night would obviously turn into, 4 years later. But we hung out that night and, he had a friend with him and we kind of just all hung out and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I remember before he left that night, he kissed me on the cheek and it like totally threw me off. And I was like, oh, he's just trying to, woo his way in and, be a typical boy. And, I'd kind of been hurt in the past by boys. So I was like totally just like going into it with, whatever happens, happens, we'll just kind of see how this goes. And then I remember the next day he had still kept talking to me and I was like, this is weird, and then we decided to go on a date that night. And it was kind of a funny date because we had planned on going to the movies and this was in the Alamo, was kind of like a new thing. So we didn't know that we had to pick out seats whenever we'd go. And so we got there and it wound up not working out. So our first date, we went to Hardee's and got a meal, and then our typical hangout spot was True Fitness parking lot. So that was honestly like that whole summer. I think that was like right at the beginning of July, and our whole like month of July was just our dates were always
hanging
True
out.
Fitness parking lot, not doing good things, but that's kind of where our relationship pretty much started. And
wow. And so, did you have any, knowledge of his past with the Lord, like
I did.
Going back and forth, and what was that like for you?
Honestly, like I'll say in high school, like that veered me away from believing and all that because I'd seen him and many others. I don't want to say in that group, but that's how it was known back in whenever I was in school. Like, oh, if you go to John and Selena's, like you're part of this cult, and I'm like, this is real. Like people, this is how people talked in school, and it kind of gave off a really bad vibe and like so seeing him go back and forth like it was just like kind of
Gave
typical.
You a bad taste.
Yeah, it did. It did. I was like
I ain't drinking that Kool-Aid.
Seriously, and so it did throw me off. But I mean I knew about that when we got together, but obviously when we hung out I knew he wasn't doing good.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay,
So,
I can put that behind me. And so then here's what I'm curious about. So, you guys hang out that summer. Do you go back to? Does he go back to school?
No, so he actually had decided. I think you decided when we were talking that you were just going to come home and go to OTC, if I remember right.
Yep.
And so probably July, August. At the end of August, he finally asked me to be his girlfriend, and I still was like hesitant. Like I still said yes, but man, I don't know. It was hard, because. A lot of our dates, just being real here, like we would sit in the parking lot and he was so high on heroin, like he was throwing up in the parking lot and just like all this like crazy stuff. And I'm like, do I want this? But I was like starting to get interested, and I was just smoking pot at the time. But I remember having several conversations with him, getting interested in more of the heavier stuff. And he obviously like, was for it as well. And so that's kind of like where we were at. And he asked me to be his girlfriend. And I still, like I said, I was hesitant,
You're
but
like, man, what an offer.
Right.
yeah. Yep.
Hardee's and heroin?
Right.
H squared, let's do it, man.
Yeah.
Dude, no, I love it. I love the rawness, man. I love the real. Dude, Hardee's and heroin. That's what you're going to say. I'm kidding, man.
Dude. That's just a real example, though. When you're in that lifestyle, that stuff, you just kind of get swept under the rug.
You do,
Because
like outside looking in, you're like, why would this little girl want to do this? But dude, you get sucked into that culture.
Right. You do.
Yeah.
You really do.
Like you said, you start thinking about
you look
it.
back now and you're like, I would never.
Yeah.
You do when you're in that, man. You just do. You get sucked in.
You do. Yeah.
You know? And so then, and I don't want to jump ahead, but for me, I just know the big like turning point or the big obstacle that took place, was really when Brendan got in a lot of trouble, and which, we'll get to in a second. How long after, when you guys started dating, did that happen?
It was literally like, he asked me to be his girlfriend. I want to say it was like a week later, because it was
wow.
It was like a week or two later, I think.
Wow.
And oh my gosh, yeah. So funny story with that too. He asked me to be his girlfriend, and we were still kind of just doing our normal things.
Right.
I remember being at work when he had gotten in trouble, and this is probably something else he'll deny or probably not really think is funny today. But I was at work, and I remember getting a text from him. He was supposed to be at school, and they left class early, and he sent me a text saying, hey, something along the lines of, my friend got his money stolen. We're going to go retrieve it back. I'm probably going to get shot. Ha ha. And that was the last text I'd heard from him.
Oh, wow.
So, of course.
Well, secretly, I was like nervous, like wanting someone to know what's going on.
I want to pause real quick because you're hesitant about being his girlfriend.
Yeah.
You're thinking about doing, heavier drugs, Hardee's, and I'm just giving you grief. And then, man, okay, maybe I might need to, do this lifestyle. And I just want to, point at you, what's your background? Was, obviously the cult thing with the Nazarenes and all that, right? Did you have any knowledge of God at this point in time?
Yeah. So growing up, we didn't go to church at first.
Yeah.
It wasn't really a thing. I had a really great mom. I did. She did everything to help raise me and my brother, but she, was working at a bar, and as you know, that lifestyle can get kind of rough too. And she worked there at nights, just to try and make the ends meet for me and my brother. And so, we got to kind of grow up a little bit and see kind of what that lifestyle was like, and, seeing some of the dates she brought home and some of the nights. We were also living with some of her friends, and it wasn't like rough, but just something. There's just things
wasn't a healthy environment.
No,
right.
exactly. Yeah. It wasn't terrible, like I said, but there was just definitely some things that veered me and my brother in different directions. And so kind of flash forward from that, she met my stepdad, and he was pretty straight, and he knew what kind of environment we all were in, and he literally picked us up, and we all moved to the state of Nevada, where his parents were close by, and we lived there for some years. And that's kind of where my mom really straightened out. She wasn't like on anything or doing anything wrong. She just, kind of grew up from that scene. Yeah. So.
And then when did you move back home or back to Marshville?
So after that, I think my mom, because my mom's family was all here, and I'm not really sure. I was kind of young, so I'm not really sure what transitioned us to move back home, but I'm glad we did, of course. So when we moved back home, things were a little rough, just to get kind of real again. My mom and stepdad kind of went through some abusive relationship, verbally, physically. Me and my brother, we were there for a lot of stuff. And we were kind of going to church, like we would go, every now and then.
Right.
And it was still kind of weird. And, this stuff was going on at home. And he was a great dude, like very, very good person. But then, those things would happen, and it just really like makes you feel weird. Yeah. Well, then flash forward, a little bit from that. My stepdad went to Encounter and had a complete 360.
Wow.
And me and my brother just were like, no, like, this isn't real. Like, how can you still look at this man and love him? And, we had felt our way about it. And, so that was kind of hard. I kind of had a little bit of an encounter more with God, like then not like, encounter over me, but just kind of like seeing
open
like,
to it,
like, okay, so his life changed. Like, how is that possible? And, just kind of like that. And like I said, in high school, you know, I had a really hard relationship with someone, and, you know, he had went to that youth group, and, you know, there was things that were said, and that, you know, people said that they were saying, you know, when he was there, and that he shouldn't be with me because I was a terrible person. And, you know, just things like that kind of veer you away from all of that. And then, you know, just kind of having that past of seeing things like, no, there can't be any good, you know, like I said, life wasn't terrible for me, but just seeing that unhealthiness, like, it just, I don't know, you know, it definitely veers you differently. So
you weren't attracted to it at all.
No.
And you find, and that, you know, I think that is important. I appreciate you sharing, because it helps people understand that most people don't grow up and be like, man, or when they're a kid, be like, man, when I grow up, I want to be addicted to drugs.
Right?
I want to be in a terribly unhealthy relationship. Little by little, by little, by little. And, you know, I appreciate you guys sharing your background, because you don't have to be raised like this or like this for it to happen. You can come from anywhere, you know, middle class, wealthy, you know, low class, it doesn't matter, right? But man, along the way, we want to be fulfilled. We want to be identified as somebody, be a part of something. And as crazy as it sounds, perverted as it sounds, within drug culture, within unhealthy relationships, you feel loved. And, you know, it's one-sided, right? But you feel loved. And that's where you find yourself, you know, in those, you know, situations. I just think that's important, and I appreciate you sharing, because people are like, you know, how and why? But you didn't just say, that's what I want to do. I want to be, you know, in True Fitness parking lot doing that. Right? And man, along the way, you know, it just happens. You know, and so then, you know, Brendan, you know, isn't loving the Lord. You guys are dating now. You know, you're at work. He's at school. Says, hey, I hope I don't get shot. You know, I'm going to get this. And that's where I want you to kind of break this down. This is your big turning point in your life. And man, you weren't just going in a little Briarwood, Marshfield house. You know what took place that night or that day?
So the guy that I had been, you know, me and a friend had been buying heroin from, he ended up getting robbed when he went to get more, and it was a substantial amount, you know, so he was freaking out. And we had been on heroin for 30, 45 days, so we were freaking out, obviously, trying to figure out where we were going to get more. And he pretty much just was at rock bottom, the dealer, and was like, if you guys help me get this back, I'll give you blah, 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 you know. And we were desperate, dude. We were, you know, withdrawn and coming down, and we're like, you know, that sounds like a great idea, you know. Stupid.
Bargain.
Right. But on the way over there, dude, like, I mean, like you said, the Lord, he doesn't ever quit trying to show you the way.
Right.
And the way over there, man, I was getting nervous. And the big dude with us didn't even get out of the car when we got there, because you could just feel it in the air in that car, dude. Something bad is about to happen, you know? Because you got this dude driving you around who's as desperate as can be.
Right.
In the midst of going there, and even the times in past, when you were about to expose yourself to darkness and drugs, did you try to push the Lord out of your mind?
Yeah.
Were you ever aware of it? You know, like cognitive, like, man, I shouldn't be doing this, God's there? Or were you just kind of in a place of darkness where that wasn't really there?
No. Once I got saved, man, it never left me.
Really?
Like,
so when you're headed there, even to do something possibly bad,
like every single day it was there with me, like, you are not doing what you're supposed to be doing, man.
I'm sure that's annoying.
It was
very. I've sinned. Obviously, we've all sinned. We sin differently, but like going in there, I think that's important for people to hear. That even in your worst decisions, it's a theological word called prevenient grace, or grace that goes before. He never stops working, you know. And so, not to interrupt, I was curious. You know, I've never asked you that.
It was.
So then you get there.
Yeah, we get there, and so like, the one guy doesn't even want to get out anymore. He's like, you know what, I'm not doing this, which that was smart, you know. And then the dude that got robbed, he obviously still wants it to happen because he wants to get his money back or something of value. And he wants me to go up to that front door and, you know, see if anybody's there. So I get out of that car and I go up there. And
you guys have any weapons or?
I did not. I didn't have anything. Yeah. And I didn't know about anything, being honest, you know?
No offense. You know, you're not 6'8", 380 pounds.
Dude, and that just goes to show you, like, anybody who's never been on drugs, and you see these people that you know are on drugs doing crazy. That's why, like,
Right.
Yeah.
like you just get to this desperation like no other. And because, yeah, man, in my right mind, I obviously never would do something like this. But yeah, I went up there, chickened out. I knew they couldn't see me, so I didn't even touch the door. Didn't ring the doorbell. Just sat there for like 10 seconds. Came back and was like, "Hey, man, no one's coming to the door. There's no one here." Well, then the dude that got robbed whips out a gun and gets out of the car and starts waving it around in the driveway. It was a pretty decent neighborhood in Springfield, and basically is like, "Are you gonna help me get this or not?" You know, he didn't point the gun at me and say it, but he's just looking at me with the gun in his hand.
Right.
So I'm like,
From
I guess
Briarwood and Marshfield to
dude,
this.
yeah. And well, he went up and he couldn't kick the door in, and just asking me again, "Are you gonna help me, dude?" And like, and so I kicked it in. Thank the Lord, there was no one just waiting for us with a shotgun.
Right.
I mean, because in Missouri, you can blow their head off if they
Right.
try and break in,
Right.
and you won't get in trouble. And
And this is a big drug dealer, right?
yeah, right. And I mean, I don't know how big, but we found out later, So yeah, we're in there trying to find his money, trying to find drugs, just anything to try and be quick about it and get out. Well, in the middle of it, I got this idea to go move the car. So I moved the car like 100 yards down the road. My friend's still sitting in the car way over there. He's like, "Dude, don't go back in there." And I'm like, "I have to, man." Like, I don't know why I thought that, but I did. So I went back in, filled up this little backpack of like Nooks and just electronics, PlayStation, whatever. I walk outside, dude, and there's 3 cop cars that just pull up at the same time, and they have their assault rifles pointed at me, and I'm just thinking, no way, dude. Like, there's no alarms going off. How would they possibly know? Is there a neighbor? So I'm immediately, obviously, that's when everything just hit me, dude. Like,
So you walk out and they have
Yeah.
ARs at you.
yes, dude.
Wow.
Like, literally just pointed at me, like, freeze,
What was going through your mind?
Oh my gosh, dude. You can only imagine. I mean,
Oh man.
just the epitome of
This
What?
isn't Call of Duty.
yeah, what was I thinking?
Right.
What am I doing right
Right.
now? Reality sets back in.
Wow.
And yeah, so they put me in the car and they go inside, and all of a sudden that dude comes out of the house.
The guy, the
the
person
dude we
that
were looking
owns the
for.
house.
Yeah,
Okay.
the guy we were looking for comes out of the house, and I'm sitting there like, what the heck, dude? Like, we looked everywhere for him
Right.
and for anything else. And apparently, dude, he was like hiding in the closet, and called the cops and said, "Hey, these strangers just broke in and they have a gun and blah, blah, blah."
Wow.
So the cops came and they were ready for something bad.
Did that guy have a gun, the one at the house? Do you have any idea?
We found out later in the last day of court, because I ended up getting a second-degree burglary charge, or first-degree, I'm sorry. Was looking at, prison time and stuff like that. And sentencing day, that judge, he goes, "Mr. Maxwell, I want you to know something. That guy you were trying to find, we took away his guns 3 days before you went over there."
Wow.
Wow.
He's like, "He would have shot you, dude. And he would have
Wow.
gotten away with it because you broke into his
Right.
house,
Without a doubt, he would have killed you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't he?
So then you're working. You get this text. You call him. No answer.
I don't think I remember calling him. I think I remember because I was kind of like the type I don't ever want to like push people like if something's going on. I remember kind of like I texted back and obviously he didn't respond. And then I kind of went on throughout the day, and I had really close friends at work there. And, I remember like kind of talking to them about it and being like, should I be concerned? They're like, "Oh, he's probably just messing around or something," and give it a little bit. And then like 3 days go by and I still haven't heard anything from
3
him.
days.
3
Yeah, 3
days.
days. And like I said,
Wow.
we both were kind of in that lifestyle. So
Yeah.
I'm not really like, I don't know. I don't want to say I wasn't like worried or like, anything. I just kind of thought, okay, well maybe something's,
Just kind of like a go with the flow thing.
yeah,
Right.
seriously.
Right.
Like I just thought, okay. But like I said, by the 3rd day, I was like starting to get worried, and I was like, maybe I should like get a hold of his mom or something. I don't know. And he had finally, I think it was like the next day, had finally gotten a hold of me.
Wow.
And
And so for you, they arrest you obviously, and they take you. And what was the behind the scenes for you?
Yeah, so that was my first time going to jail. So anybody who's done that, you know what that's like. So yeah, I'm in jail and just kind of trying to get acclimated in there with, you know, people that I've never met before. And, you know, and even just in Springfield, Missouri, dude, that ain't no joke. You know, there's people in there that will mess you up quick if you say something wrong. So you're just kind of watching what you say, who you look at, how long you look at them, you know, stuff like that. Yeah, you're just thinking about your choices. You're just thinking about, you know.
Were all these memories from your childhood to that point?
Yeah, dude, because that, like you said, that was the pivotal moment where he had made it clear before 100 times, dude. But this was like that moment where he's like, you're going to die or you're going to never see anyone you care about again.
Right.
So which one, what do you want to do?
Wow.
You got those two or you can live for me, dude.
Wow.
You know?
Yeah.
And so, I mean.
Did you call your mom and dad in there?
Yeah, I got to call them, you know, and they just couldn't believe it. I mean, they were just like, what the heck, dude? Are you serious? They had no idea I was on heroin or, you know, messing around with anything more than pot.
And you called Jess?
Yeah, when I got out, because I didn't have her number memorized, crappy boyfriend.
Right. right.
Yeah, so I get out and I text her and I'm like.
How long were you in there for?
I think, it was like 2 or 3 days.
I think it was 24 hours is what
like
they held
that.
you for, yeah.
Yep, because I went in at like 7 p.m., got out the next day at like, right around there.
Okay.
And then they ended up, you know, giving you, you know, what was the sentence, or not the sentence, but what was the crime?
Yeah, so a first-degree burglary, which in Missouri, that means there was a deadly weapon involved.
Right.
Even though I didn't have it, I was a party to it. And I didn't know that was going to be a big deal, dude. But then I started looking at it, and it's like 5 to 15 years, you know?
Wow.
So we sit down with the lawyer, and we have to hire like a big-time attorney. And
Did it sink in here? Like before you're going to ISS?
yeah, bro.
Right.
OSS.
Yeah, it sinks in real quick because you start looking around at the people you care about and the dreams and goals you had for your life, you know, and you're like,
You're this great athlete and all that. And then
Yeah,
at that moment,
right.
it doesn't matter.
yeah, and like being a good athlete and all that. At this point, I had quit the team or left college because I mean I just could not stop using it. I didn't even care about baseball anymore. So, you know, Jessica really caught me at like the worst of the worst, you know. And even after this, like even when you get out of jail and you say, "Oh, I'm going to live right now," like it ain't easy, dude. I mean, it's every single day you got to wake up and say, I'm going to choose to do the right thing today. You know?
I remember, you know, John telling me, hey, here's what Brendan did. And I was like, oh, man, like, here we go. And so then you guys keep dating, you know? I mean, you're a trooper, you know? Like
It definitely was a hard transition. I'll say that.
Yeah, you guys keep talking. But I remember I'm moving back to Springfield to plant a church. I have an apartment with like other staff members, and did you come up there and like knowing like it was like high school all over again. Brendan got in trouble, but this time it was not with the principal. You know, it was the law, and it was like some. And I don't know if you remember being in that apartment. You know, I was putting together like something. I'm terrible at putting stuff together.
I do remember that.
Now Maddie does it.
Terrible.
But you're just right there, and I could just tell you're just this look. You just look down, and you're like, man, this is it. This is real. And so, you know, fast forward, you know, you get on track with the Lord. You know, you get, which, you know, you're facing prison. You're like, Lord, I will serve you. You know, like right. But then, you know, you and Jess keep dating, and then you go back to the church, and were you more open to God at that point in time, or no?
Yes and no. I honestly, like whenever he had gotten a hold of me after all that, and basically he was just saying, hey, this is what happened. You know, I really care about you. I do. And I would love to still keep seeing you, but I totally understand, you know, if you're not up for this, if you're not ready for this. He didn't really tell me what he was charged with yet or anything. I don't know if you knew at that point yet either, but, you know, so I had to think about it for a little bit, because I didn't really feel like I was doing anything wrong. Like, you know, I was just hanging out with my friends, casually smoking pot. Like, I didn't really feel like it was a big deal. Obviously, nothing happened to that extreme like he had. So I'd kind of had to make that decision. Like, you know, do I want to keep seeing him? You know, because he had, you know, said, I'm done with all that, you know, and I didn't really know if I wanted to be done with it, you know. And so I I was, but I wasn't done with it. You know, I still kept seeing him. You know, I would still go hang out with friends occasionally. I didn't smoke pot anymore, but I would like drink.
Right.
And then, you know, I finally had seen, you know, changes in him, and the fact that he just quit cold turkey on those big drugs. You know, that was a big eye opener for me. Like, you know, that's not just him. Like there's something there that's, you know, helping him out.
And you've seen him go back and forth all this time, but now he's in trouble, and then these big drugs are gone. You know, you're faced with, what do I do?
Yep.
Do you recall the first moment you're like, man, maybe I want this, you know?
Yeah. There's just something about Brendan. I mean, you guys say, you know, he's a turd, but gosh, he just says some of the greatest things. Seriously, you know.
The best turd,
You know, before he'd even gotten in trouble, he had met my family. I never met his family before he'd gotten in trouble, but my mom loved him, like, from the start.
He's always been a lover.
Seriously.
Like in the midst, I think that's why I loved him so much. I'm like, if you were a punk, dude, I would just been done with you, but you were a lover. I get it.
Yeah, there's just something about him. But, you know, my family, like, fell in love with him even before he was good.
Yeah.
And, you know, like, my mom would ask me about him.
Wow.
And, you know, so I just knew, like, okay, I got to stay with him. There's something there. You know, when your family loves someone, you know, that's big to me anyways.
Yeah.
So, you know, I don't know, something just kept telling me to stay with him.
Yeah.
Wow.
You know, there's definitely times where I'm like, do I want to keep doing this? Do I not? But I don't know. Like I said, there was just something to keep
Even
telling
still
me.
today.
Right. But then, I mean, and that's kind of where our relationship comes together, because then you keep coming, you start going to church.
Yeah.
You know, were you like, man, I actually like this, or, you know, it probably took a little bit. I mean, what was that like?
It did take a little bit because, I mean, like I said previously, I'd been kind of hurt by, you know, essentially the Nazarene churches, the comments and stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, I was hesitant, but I really cared about Brendan, and this was something that was really important to him.
Wow.
So you know, when I started going, you guys know how it is. You go into that service and, you know,
Drink
something
the
just
Kool-Aid.
wrecks you. Yeah. I just like remember just feeling something, and I really wasn't quite sure what yet. And but I just knew, like, this is where I was supposed to be. Really not sure what I'm feeling yet, not sure what I believe yet, but I want to keep coming. I want to keep dating Brendan. And, you know, it just, everything kept clicking, and, you know, it just made sense.
Wow. You know, I think that's just such a testament of our God.
Yeah.
You know, Romans 8:28, man, he makes all things work together, you know, for those who love him and called according to his purpose. And, and that's where I love, because then, you know, you're working out this whole lawyer situation, law situation, but you guys end up deciding to get married. You know, you're wanting to get married. You know, and you know, hey, he might be facing time.
Yeah.
What gets you to the point of, like, I'll sign up for that? Like, you know, like, it sounds crazy, but it's true love. But man, like, you're a warrior and you're loyal. What was that about?
Man, I don't know. I'm telling you, like, something just kept telling me to. I need to stay with him. Like, I'm gonna start crying. I'm sorry.
It's real.
Something just kept telling me to stay with him. I just knew, like, you know, obviously he had his family, but something just told me if I left him, it just wouldn't be right. I mean, I didn't think that he would go back to doing what he's doing, of course, but I just knew that I needed to.
Done?
Yeah, you know, I don't know. I just knew that I needed to stay there. I just knew that, you know, this was the one. Really not sure still how I felt, but, you know, I just, like I said, it was just there. There was just a voice all the time. Just, you need to stay with him. You need to stay with him.
Wow. And, you know, and I think that's what's so cool is, that's when Madi, you know, starts to get always knew Brendan, you know, from the outside, but then really get to know you, and then you, and then find out you guys are gonna get married. And, you know, I had the honor of doing that wedding. I'll never forget it. You know, it was here in Marshfield, and, you know, I'll never forget just standing there, you know, up on that stage, and through all this stuff me and this guy's been through, you know, like, love him as much as anyone, you know, but biggest turd, but like love so. But man, you know, you know, I'm already up on stage, and he starts walking, and him being like, in the church where we went to, you know, and I could just tell in your eyes, it was like, why is God still loving me?
Right.
That's all, you know, that's what I saw.
Yeah.
And then, you know, Jessica walks in, you know, the bride, you know, and the wedding dress resembles purity, and, you know, and man, you're walking in, and that's, you know, symbolic, you know, and the bride of Christ. But then here you're walking down, going to be his bride, or, you know, are his bride, and he just breaks. And as I was standing there, I was like, man, this is the gospel. You know, you guys are following love with God, you know, and you guys are, there's a lot of unknown, but man, God was so real in your life and it was so, you know, evident, and you guys, you know, get married and it was such a, you know, an amazing thing. But then, you know, fast forward, I don't know how long after your court date was.
It's like 3 months from our, yep.
So 3 months we're in there. You guys are
3 months after you got married?
Yeah.
Okay.
You guys are solid with the Lord at this time. You're you know, just ingrained in the church, man. You're ingrained with each other. You're sober, doing incredible. So we're going into this court date, this courtroom, very confident. Like, we got, you know, the Lord's got this, we're good. Yeah. And me and John are there, you know, and obviously Jessica and, you know, the family are there, and we're sitting down, and you know, the guy right before you gets like 7 years. And I was like, oh, snap.
Yeah.
You know, granted, I'm used to watch my parents go to jail and prison, all that, but I'm like, oh, this dude ain't playing. And then Brendan gets up there and the prosecutor destroys you. Yeah. Like, destroys. And then John looks at me and I look at John, I'm like, this ain't good. He goes, you know, I don't know word from word, you know, verbatim, but it was essentially, this guy's had time and time again, opportunity after opportunity. He deserves X amount of years, Judge. And I was like, holy crap. And man, this is the best illustration of the gospel I've ever seen in my life. The court says, well, does anybody want to speak? And his dad, you know, this entire time, granted, me and Joe, which is his dad, have had interventions with Brendan along with John. And he's just the most meek, mild guy ever. But man, steps up, takes his glasses off, and goes before front of the judge and says, Your Honor, I'm Brendan's dad. We're here, you know, as a family. His wife, his pastor, his best friends. I know he's done this, but I want you to know that we're here for him. We love him. Promise you he's got support. And I'll never forget, man, I'm like, that's the Father. That's the Father's love, the Heavenly Father's love. Not just the earthly, that's the Heavenly Father. You know, that's what Jesus did, man. Going before the Father, saying, listen, like, I love him. I know he's done this. I died for him. Man, I'm here.
Right.
And the judge gets done, or you get done, and the judge goes, well, thank you. Or excuse me, your dad gets done, and he goes, thank you. And I just remember sitting there, and I remember the judge just kind of taking off his glasses and looking and saying, Brendan, I want you to know not very many people have the support group that you have. Usually it's them by themselves, and so we send them off because they don't have the support. I want you to know your church is represented, your family's represented, your wife's represented here. I shouldn't do this, but we're not going to send you to prison, essentially, you know? Yeah. And it was just, I'm like, that's the gospel. You know, that's what salvation's all about. But man, like, what was that?
What was that like?
It's funny now, but not at the moment. Like, standing there before, because it's real now. All the things you've ever done caught up with you. You're standing there. You're about to do some serious time. What was that like?
Just that, like you said, we came in there real confident, but you can't help but have that little thought in the back of your mind, like, what if?
Especially when the guy before you gets that much.
Yeah, and I think it was 10. I think he was just like, 10 years, see ya, you know? Wow. I'm like, yeah, I'm next. You know, and it's just like, yeah, so, I don't know, dude. Everything just flashes through your head. You know, Jessica, obviously, and my family and her family. And
what was it like watching your dad stick up for you?
Oh, I was just crying thinking about it just now. Like you said, man.
Because he'd been there through it all, time and time again.
Yeah, and just bailed me out time and time again. And man, if you don't know my dad, there's just something about him. He just wears his heart on his sleeve and so genuine, you know. And I think the Lord spoke right through him, you know, that day when he was up there in front of the judge. And because that was one of the things the prosecutor said. Like, that was one of his concluding points was he doesn't have the support, you know. And I think it kind of fired my dad up. Right. Like, excuse me.
Right.
You know? Yeah. I don't know, man. You just can't put it into words, really.
And the relief after that.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
You know, and so, man, you guys, you know, for you, I'll never forget you hugging him afterwards. I was like, Wow. Like, this is the most powerful thing I've seen. I'm like, this is what it's about. True love. Hardy's and heroin to looking at 10, 15 years.
Right.
Yeah.
And then but it hasn't been an easy journey. But, as we, move to the end of this podcast, that was how many years ago?
It'll be 4 in November.
So it's 4
Yeah.
years, around that time. Fast forward, you have 2 beautiful kids, live in a nice
One that
home.
peed on your floor today.
Yeah, right?
Yes.
Your family is together,
Yeah.
super close. You
Yeah.
guys love each other. The Lord is the center of your life.
Yeah.
You have a business of your own, and you're a felon,
Yeah.
right? You're
Yeah.
the best looking felon I've ever seen in my life, right? And the nicest felon ever. Though that's going to eventually get erased away,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
I mean, the skeptic would say, well, you got sober, and so finally you guys figured it out. I would say, without the Lord, you're
Dude.
dead or in prison. You are, with someone else or doing something else.
Yep.
And I want to, ask Jessica, you struggle with the, believing and these bad comments because sometimes the church doesn't do the best job of reflecting God, but then you've seen God's blessings upon your life and you've went through it. Not saying that it's all been amazing, or not saying it has, that it's been easy, but it's been amazing. What would you tell somebody? Or what would you say about God's hand upon your life, throughout your guys' journey?
I mean, just like you said, it's definitely not easy. Not every day is, golden, but commitment is key. I mean, you just got to keep striving every single day and just putting your focus on the good, surrounding yourself around good people. I mean, you start hanging around with that old crowd again. I mean, and like Brendan said, it's not them. I mean, you have the free will, but, and that's exactly what it is. You've got to make that choice.
Right.
And, like I said, commitment is seriously key. Like
Right.
you've got to just keep pushing forward every day and making goals and knowing, this is what you want for your life. And whether you come from a good home or you come from an unhealthy home, like
Right.
you have to know what you want and commit to that every
Right.
single day.
Right.
What you said about the friends is so good because it's, in junior high and high school, it's like, oh, is it good friends or bad friends? As you get older, it's no. It's not about that. It's my destiny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's bigger than being cool with friends. It's
Right.
listen, here's where I'm headed.
Right.
Yeah.
And so for you, watching what God has done in Jessica's life, watching you've got 2 beautiful, kids, and pretty sure Silas is gonna be the next second baseman for the Cardinals today, right? Dude, I mean, you've experienced the grace of God upon your life as much as anyone I've ever seen in my life. You know what I'm saying?
100%.
Dude, I mean, what's that like,
Yeah.
man?
Here's the best way I know to describe it. I mean, not just the grace, but just in general, like every single person on this earth, there's 2 plans for everybody's life. One plan is from God, but there's a whole nother plan that has been carefully thought out and put together and crafted by Satan. And you're on one of the 2, you know?
Right.
That's good.
And there's no in between. You know what I mean? When you're in the middle, you're still with Satan. And that's and that's where I was, man, for the longest time. And like you said, his grace, that's been the epitome of, this is my story. That is my story. I mean,
Yeah.
no matter how many times I got off track again, no matter how many times I ruined relationships and, people's outlook on me, I just always knew that he was enough. He's enough. He can get me through it, and that's all I need, even if it's by myself, which it never was.
All right.
Never even close to that. But I knew if it ever got to that point, he would still be enough. And I didn't get to that point until, sitting in jail. But dude, when you're sitting in jail, it's just one-on-one, you and the Lord.
Right.
I mean, seriously.
No one else. Yeah.
No one else really, you realize right then and there, okay, my life, my choices, no one else matters but
Right.
me and him and Satan. It's like a 3-way thing,
That's so good. So
I
good.
don't know.
Man.
Man, so I want to ask you both one question before we close. So, Jessica, I feel like your faith journey is just the fact that you watched all these people, some maybe a little hypocritical, maybe love the Lord go back and forth. You're on the outside looking in. What would you say to people who are in that situation right now who are like, I don't even know if this is real because the people I'm watching right now.
That's good.
You know what I mean? Like, what would you say to those people right now?
I mean, it's your typical, you can't always, follow what people say or do. Like, you have to step out, and figure out for yourself, something that comes to mind is that song, Peace by Hope Dars. She says, set my feet out onto the sea until I'm dancing in the deep.
Yeah.
Like, that is such a good quote for people that are right there on the outside. Like, you've just got to set out, and look out for yourself, if you're,
right.
If you're, you think that these people are judging you, then you need to go somewhere else where you do feel comfortable, of course, but you've got to step out in your own faith and just, reach for more than
right.
earthly things.
Right.
That's good.
And that's hard, obviously for people that are on the fence to hear that, but I mean, you really do. I mean, it's your eternity. You've got to think about that.
That's good.
That is good.
So good.
And then Brendan, I want to ask you, because yours is different. You are on the other side of that. So you're like, and genuinely love the Lord. I mean, but you have an addiction and you're going back and forth. And it doesn't mean you don't love the Lord. It doesn't mean you're not genuine about it, but it just means you're struggling.
Right.
So what would you tell those people who they want to do good? It's just this constant struggle in their minds. What would you leave with them?
Yeah, so, I mean, especially the people that are like right in the midst of it right now.
Go to jail.
I mean, you got to see the bigger picture, and it's so hard to do when you're on those drugs, man. Like, you don't even think about it, or you just want to block it out. But, I mean, there's people in your life that depend on you. There's people in your life that are looking up to you. There's people, in your life that are waiting for you to finally get it together, man.
Right.
And, until you do that, until you take that step and whatever it is, like the Lord's He's going to present you the opportunity, but it's up to you to take it.
Right.
And, that's what, those people in that situation, that's where you're at. When you get that opportunity, you got to jump on it. Because, dude, you might end up just like one of your friends dead.
Right.
The next time you bang up your drugs, man.
Right.
That's good, man.
Yeah.
I'm so glad, that you guys are who you are and that you're at where you're at. We've both experienced, Brendan and I, incredible losses within friends, of just who've passed away, and from drugs and, from that lifestyle. Yeah. And man, the fact that God is still and chasing us, even when we don't deserve it, man. We might not be on drugs today, but man, even in our worst moments today,
still happens.
That grace is still there, and I think it's incomprehensible. But man, we love you guys. I'm so proud of you. Madi and I just I've always just valued your personality. You guys are some of the best people on this planet. Y'all
and the chillest people too.
And right back at you guys.
Yeah. And your loyalty is God given.
It is.
Now
it's unbelievable.
The enemy used that for a while. But man, he, what the enemy intended for harm, God uses for good, and God's used that loyalty, I think, to be a huge component for him.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
The skeptic might say, well, once your felony's away, then we'll see, man. Yeah. Number one, it's God's grace and grounded, but man, you guys have something that's so special, and you're impacting so many people, and now you're raising your kids, to follow the Lord, and so man, I just know he's just getting started with you guys, so we love you, and so thankful you came and shared your story today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Make sure to subscribe to this channel so that these episodes are sent to you each month, along with our Life and Leadership podcast that shares content about the behind the scenes in our own lives and also talk about various leadership principles that we found to be beneficial in our own life and ministry.
Also, check out our midweek message and worship podcast that's released every Thursday. Thanks for hanging out with us.